We found out that running at 40 miles an hour is not the best thing to do. Everyone was excited about TF2, and then rapidly got unexcited about TF2. And then, everyone starts losing all of their stuff over lunar flight, over Eden River, floating on a river, right? Losing everything off a very colorful and very bombastic game of Breakout. In first person. These are type of experiences that maybe they're a bit slower or a bit more introspective than your typical experience that you would see on the monitor, but the impact of them is hard to describe. So, with that, we're going to dive right into this roundtable. I want to make it, once again, a little bit light, a little bit conversational. There's a lot of us, so if you begin to drone on and I start to do this in some Oscar music, you know what to do. So, other than that, I also want to allow some time for questions as well, so we're going to try to make this a little bit snappy. So, I just want to go down the line. If you can introduce yourself, what title that you're associated with or what you're working on next, and also maybe a short sentence or two about how you got involved in the VR space. I love that. So,
hello, my name is Aaron Lemke. I call myself Unello Design. It sounds like it's more than one person, but really, it's just me. And right now I'm working on Deep River HD, which is kind of a relaxation game. I'm also working on Opera Nova, which is sort of like VR Fantasia. And what else? How did I get into VR? I remember sitting in school, in middle school, sort of daydreaming and being like, oh, that's totally going to be possible, like soon. I should probably start thinking about that. So yeah, just kind of, I've been waiting for a while. I'm very excited.
Hello, I'm Denny, Unger, creative director at Cloudhead Games. We're doing the Gallery 6 Elements, which is like a slow-paced exploration, puzzle-solving kind of experience. How I got into VR, virtuality in 1992. I put on the headset and it was the worst experience of my life, and went to the bathroom, felt like shit, but I still really loved the experience. And it stuck with me all those years, and for 2 decades I thought of all these great things that you could do in VR. So when everything started taking off for Palmer and Oculus last year, I knew that that was the right moment to really get involved and try out some of those ideas.
I'm James Andrew, and I'm the founder and the developer of PixelRouter VR. And I first got involved in VR when I was in high school, and I went out to a welding supply store. I bought myself a safety visor that goes out over your face, and I ripped off the glass and replaced it with a flexible Renaud magnifier. And then I would cover my monitor with a big shroud, and I'd be in there playing Strike Commander. It was my first virtual reality. It was kind of my Oculus Rift for the early 90s. It was a little early, but it was a lot of fun. And this time around, I got involved with starting PixelRouter. Actually, I made a little demo to bring up to the first Oculus event in Cambridge. I spent 5 days, just brought this thing up there and just sort of crashed it a little bit, gave a demo, and saw people's expressions on their face while they were playing it. We were going back and forth like this, and I actually coined a term for it. It's called Stevie Wondering. I love that. I want to make that happen. more. And so now we're a small game studio that really was born out of the whole meetup scene. I am actually the only person that's been to every meetup in Boston and New York. I drive to Boston all the time. I drive to New York explicitly to scout talent, and I've found some really good talent. I've got a guy named Kellen working with me now, and we basically made Rift Wars, our first game, as a 30-day project to bring up to the next meetup, so people can try it. And so that's the demo that's up on the Oculus site, and then today I've got one that we've been spending another couple of months on. And we've got a lot of hopes for it.
I'm Blair Renaud. I'm working on a game called Technolust currently, and I've got something else working in the background that I can't discuss yet, but it's going to be awesome. I got into VR, well, like most people in the 90s, trying out really bad virtual reality experiences, but more recently, I had managed to save up about $300 worth of sales in Second Life, cashed it out, bought a DK1, and started to go. I went through all the demos on the Oculus forums, and it was actually pretty disappointing with what was there. I was like, where's the crazy demo? Like, I understand I'm walking around Tuscany and that's really cool, but where's the UFO that's going to blow it up and the T-Rex that comes in and like scares me, right? So, and Cyberpunk, where's the Cyberpunk? It's VR, we need Cyberpunk. So I put together a couple of little demos and people seem to really like them on the forums and dove in.
Hi, I'm Justin Moravetz. I worked on a title called Proton Pulse. My next title is not officially named, but it's Project Wormhole right now. It's a fast action third-person rail shooter. And I've been interested in VR since my science project in 7th grade, where I hacked together 2 little Game Boy magnifiers with displays on the other end. And while it really hurt your eyes, it did technically work. And anyway, I've been working in the game industry for the last 9.5 years. And this week is the very first week I'm a free man. Last Friday was my last day in that industry. I love this genre so much that I gave up my career for it. And so I'm very happy to be here as an independent.
Hi, my name is Sean Edwards. I'm from Australia, as you can probably tell. I created a game called Lunar. It started off as a niche physics based flight simulation on the moon, and I, like a lot of these guys, bought a DK1 after seeing the Kickstarter, and purely initially just because I wanted to get a DK1 and play around with it. I didn't actually plan to do any development with it, and in fact when I got mine, it sat in my room for about 2 weeks and I didn't even open it up because I was too busy, and very shameful. And I tried Heli 2 as a demo very early on, and it was a helicopter flight simulator, simple little demo. But it was quite compelling for me when I first tried that I just had to put it into Lunar Flight. So thus started my venture into VR. Unlike a lot of these guys, I don't really have a history of following VR. I remember Lawnmower Man quite fondly, but other than that.
Excellent. Thank you everyone for those introductions. I'll dive right in. One of the things I'm most curious about is how your workflow looks like as a VR developer. What is your workflow like? Are you having the rip on your forehead and going in, popping out, and going in and popping out? What engine are you using? And as far as working with a team, like how is that working for those of you that are? How is that working out for you? How has the development in VR changed game development from process-wise?
The big change that I've noticed, or at least I thought was going to be a change, I was a little bit worried about going into coffee shops with my headset and just like zoning out, putting a headset on in public. But I've done it a couple times now, and it's not, people that don't care, they're just like whatever. A lot of people will come talk to you, they're like, oh, that looks cool. Can I play with that? So, I don't know. Yeah.
All right, I got this now. As far as development goes, I kind of go in a circle. So primarily, I use the Unity 3D engine for fast, rapid prototype. But in my previous job, I used Unreal for a while as well, tested that out. And so I'm asked, which one do I use? And the answer is whatever fits, because there are strengths in both. Right now, Unreal really has a very low barrier of entry as far as price goes. You need Unity Pro to use head-mounted display technology at this point. That being said, competition is great. Maybe that business model will change. But I'm always spending time developing new stuff, new prototypes, but like I said, I go in a rotation. So when I'm absolutely done with working on these particle effects or working on this visual effect, I then go to chiptune music or something else. And I'm always developing the title, but I'm doing something else that any kind of burnout, or I've already gone for 2 riffs at this point, you know? And so, yeah, so you just keep going and keep that in. You just make cool stuff as much as you can.
Yeah, my actual development process, which I've kind of got into a routine now, is if I'm doing something that I've kind of established and I'm just tuning it, I generally have the game's output in Unity. I use Unity just in one of the windows. I don't actually use the Rift, and I can do a lot of testing from there. If I'm checking perspective issues or anything like that, or actually testing it, I have a little script that will set the game window to the Rift, the second display. And sometimes I'll just leave it on there and adjust some things in the scene view and just hit play and stick it on my face. I found that process fairly less awkward than initially when I was trying to use it. That whole environment can be quite challenging initially, but that seems to work.
Rift Wars was a 30-day collaboration between myself and Kelly McNeil, and I actually wrote most of the code for it in between runs at the lodge at my local ski resort. I feel like I'm living in the future as far as development goes, because I'm on the lift using voice recognition to talk into HipChat to say, Kelly, wouldn't it be cool if we do such and such with the tractor beams? And then I go down and code it up. And man, after spending 15 years in traditional development environments, agile and all that, there's a whole set of tools that are behind Unity that enable a whole new way of working. I mean, oddly enough, even though VR involves sort of putting something on your face and getting inside a virtual world, it's enabled me to be outside more, developing like this. You know, like I said, I did a lot of it at a ski resort, and that's why I want to do this. I want to work like
that. So we all have Rift burn at the office, which means we all have that circle around our faces. It looks like sunburn or some kind of skin cancer around your eyes. So we've been coming up with these weird ideas, like let's put our development riffs on like swing arms from drafting lamps, and so you can just kind of take a quick peek and then keep coding or keep doing whatever you gotta do. So we're doing all these really strange things with how we set up our desktop for that type of development. But like honestly, the difference in workflow is I think you run up against just the pure challenges of working with novel hardware. I mean, there's just so many unknowns and so many things you have to discover through the process of developing. So you have that layer of standard, software development, but then you're hit with all these very unusual challenges that come up almost weekly that you have to find novel solutions for.
Actually work a lot differently, I think, than most people here. I tend to put the Rift on like with a very basic kind of layout of an area and set my phone beside me on record and talk to myself. Like I'm looking around the room and I'll say what I'm looking at and say, I think I need something over here that's kind of dirtier. I need some more particles. Like to me it's more like doing like set decoration or something. Like I like to get into the world, look around, see what needs to be done, record it, pop the Rift up on top of my head. I have every program in the Adobe Suite open, ready to go. It's like, oh, I need this sound, save that off, drop it in.
I do the same.
Like do everything all at once.
Do you find that so when you're going through a level, you're looking for bugs, you're looking for whatever, and you're seeing all the little things you can enhance, that you're forgetting more than you like, because you're so overwhelmed by being in the experience, you keep forgetting the things that you need to fix. So
that's why I recorded on the phone.
Exactly, right? It's to create a So at the office, we all yell at each other while we're in there. Don't forget to fix this. Don't forget to fix that, because you just keep using it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
quickly.
Yeah. I can't tell you how valuable it's been to demo Rift Wars at places like this and at PAX. And I'm watching people's faces and I'm saying, when are they smiling the most? Okay, I'm going to do more of that. You know, that kind of thing. Because 100% of the time that I play Rift Wars with other people at places like this, and it's just so valuable to see people's expressions. So please come play it. I want to watch your faces.
I guess as indie developers, I don't know how disciplined you guys are with setting out tasks and things like that, but I'm very improv. Like I will just like Blair, I'll play and I'll go, I need it. I'm kind of focusing on one particular feature, but then I'll spot something and go, actually I might do that now, and I just get sidetracked with different things, and it kind of evolves kind of that way.
Oh, absolutely, everything is iteration, and I'm easily distracted. So I see something sparkly over there, and I'll focus on that way too long. And then it's 6 a.m. and I have to get back to the feature I was working on, but yeah.
I'll say one more thing. I think we live in a really cool time because you can make an entire game on your laptop. And this kind of goes with what you were saying about being at the ski lodge. You can make a game from anywhere. So I'm a big fan of Skrillex. You may not know it from my games, but he made his passenger records while he was touring, in a hotel room on his laptop. So that to me is incredible. That's kind of my dream, just to travel and make games.
To switch gears a little bit and talk about challenges with hardware, this is a lot of unknown, a lot of blazing trails as far as UI, UX, deciding what works and what does not. Blair Locomotion, I thought we did about some of the innovations there. Where to put your HUD, how to have a person know what's going on in the space. What are some of the challenges that you've had in virtual reality specifically about how the player interacts with the world?
Well, if you recall, in the earliest version of the Proton Pulse, the second you looked at a button, it would click. And the problem with that is people would tend to look down and exit and quickly exit the game right away. And then they have to go back in and their eyes are sore. And then you give it to somebody else and they say, don't look down. And the first thing they do is say, what? They exit the game. So at that point, I decided to put in a timer on that. And so now you can go through the menus and whatever. But I was adamant about not having a controller wherever possible because it's not a unified input on PC. There's 360 controllers, whatever. And so I developed this technology. I'm not sure if it was in a demo I released or not, where at the very beginning of the game, you tap the side of your Oculus and then it centers your Oculus and then you go on. And so in trying to avoid having input from a keyboard or a mouse or a controller, I find there's these interesting areas that were somewhat unexplored before, but at the same time obvious and intuitive, that I can drive really basic games. And so for UI, everything has to be physically there. I can't use, the engine's not designed to be in VR originally. So I have all of these objects placed everywhere. I have these ray check hacks things, so if I'm looking at something, it'll select it, it knows what I'm doing. But it was definitely iterative. There was a lot of trial and error, a lot of R&D and stuff like that, but it is one of the big challenges, is that you can't just throw up a UI in VR. You have to make it at this point.
I think that's exactly right. I'm trying to avoid any sort of artificial anything, like virtual reality. In reality, plates of glass don't come up in your face with options. Things like that don't happen, right? So I'm just trying to make it purely physical based. Like, if you want to select that thing, walk up to it, look at it, select it. No weird menus popping up. And there's issues with that for, people are maybe a little confused as to what they should do. But that's fine. Hang out for a bit, figure it out. Like, you're in this cool place, wander around and enjoy it. And another thing I do is my girlfriend doesn't play games at all. So I pop it on her head and say, go. And like the first time with say Technolust, I was like, okay, WASD. She's like, what? What's that? I can't see. I've got this thing on my face, and now you want me to use weird control schemes and stuff. I'm like, okay, well, forget that then. That's just everyone knows how to use a mouse. Let's put your movement on the mouse and your active or whatever your activation button on the mouse. And I let her go, and she's like, oh, okay, now I get it. Just lay back in a chair, and then she loves it. So yeah, you have to bounce it off of other people as well, because I think we get an idea in our head and think, oh, it's going to be great, and then it's not for everyone.
Yeah, I found that VR more or less made my interface better in some ways. I have like 50 different keys that you can bind into simulation, and by making the cockpit contextual, so wherever you look at, and the cockpit just kind of grew out as I realized I need this feature, and then you can interact with that thing that happens in the game. It kind of evolved, and there were some things that were obvious that had to be in the cockpit, and other things that you would interact with, like pressing buttons and changing things on the panels, and then some things that had to be kind of artificial, like you need to give the user feedback about things they're doing, like this selected mission, and they will look away from the screen. You want to make sure that some things you have to reinforce. You need to know when to remind them something. So I have over text overlays that will come up in front of you, but also the things that you look at that are contextual. You need to let the player know that they can interact with those things. So have a little arrow pop up next to whatever it is that you're looking at to say, yes, you can interact with this thing. And that's artificial. Some people may or may not like that. I think this is kind of an area that you have to have some sort of feedback that may not be realistic. Everything else from my interface, I actually went back and rebuilt every part of my UI to be usable in VR. And everything else that I couldn't do, like option screens and all those sorts of things. I tried to do like a pop-up screen that pops up in front of you, and it's navigated by the D-pad. It's one area I'd like to improve it actually, is to make those screens contextual and usable targeting to select items, and rather than using the D-pad to reduce the complexity of it.
One thing that I've been challenged by is that in VR, scale matters. The size of things in your world matters in the way that when it's not VR, you can get away with that. But when you've got the Rift in there that is sort of setting the real world scale for a human being, the size of the things in your world matter. And this actually opens up a lot of neat possibilities in terms of playing with that to create cool effects. But there was a lot of learning in that respect.
Yeah, on another scale, sorry, in particular with Lunar, it's contextual cockpit. You basically set up colliders to look at, and you do a raycast to that collider. And I found that I had to tune that and make it feel good. Those colliders have to be much larger than the object that it was looking at, because you have this kind of gross positioning of the head where it's not actually completely accurate, and you don't want to make it too difficult. Kind of just trying to find that sweet spot to look at it. So yeah, that was something I kind of figured.
I think the novelty and newness of the platform of VR itself really demands that we train people in how to use and interact in the environment. So I think the biggest challenge for early developers is doing just that. I think like a year from now, people will kind of understand VR, and they'll already have a good sense of how things are done, which will open up all kinds of great doorways for designers, because they can just kind of get past this initial year, of what we have to inform players on how to deal with being in that space. And they're included, so you have challenges with what input you're using. So we're hinging on gamepad and motion control because they're the most sort of natural ways to interact in the format. But I really believe that depending on what kind of experience you're creating, that rotational velocities in VR is the biggest challenge. If you're doing a first-person game where you're embodied, it's those rotations and that acceleration in circle. It's still something that really hasn't been solved, and I'm not saying we've solved it with VR comfort mode, but it's something that gives you a predictable amount of velocity on your turns. It's like a ratcheting turn, and it feels it's like a damn. Very strange things that you have to deal with in virtual reality. But as a group, we're finding the answers that we need, and I would way rather be a developer in 2 years than right now. But it's exciting and amazing all at the same time, but it's also just chaotic and really, really hard.
Quick question, a little bit about genres. So right now, first-person shooters are king of the hill, as it were, in a lot of respects. So far in the VR space, we've had adventure games, cockpit type, flight sim type things where you have you're in a ship. It's a frame of reference there, and then we've had quite a few relaxation titles that have been pretty popular. So what do you thought about the genres and some of the feedback you've got from users? Starting with Aaron. You've been heavy to like the meditative relaxation.
Yeah, what do I think about genres? I don't know, there's kind of a cool thing about VR. You kind of just put someone in an environment, and if the environment is compelling enough, then it's fun and it's fun to play. You don't necessarily have to have goals. That's something I'm realizing, especially with a relaxation game. The second you give someone a set of goals, at least for most gamers, they're kind of like, oh, okay, what are the goals? Let's do it. And they just get into game mode and they stop, I don't know, they stop relaxing or doing, looking around or exploring. Yeah.
Yeah, a big part of it is letting people discover the environment that they're in, because it's such a unique format. You want to hang out, you want to absorb the space, so we consciously chose an exploration type experience, much same idea, but it doesn't mean that that's the right way to do it, but it's just a good way to introduce people to the format, really.
I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the things we haven't seen yet. Like, I think there's just a massive opportunity for all sorts of things. And but even now, obviously, I think the go-to thing is to do something that's first-person perspective. But I'd like to see more people try things that just don't have to act. They don't have to be first-person. They could be third-person, purely because the Rift is a great 3D device, and you're still in that space. It may be from third-person, and you're not as immersed as in terms of it being from first-person perspective. But I'd like to see more people try those sorts of things.
I've got something interesting to show you.
I think there's new genres that
That's
people
exactly
haven't touched yet. Like there's I've got some ideas for things that I think people haven't done because it's not the immediate thought you have. It's something that maybe a lot of people play a lot, but it's not cool and like my first thought was like, oh, I could do an awesome cyberpunk adventure. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, a lot of people, like there's things like Candy Crush and stuff like that that are huge. And like there's ways you can do things in VR that are kind of like, cracked video games like that. And I've got some ideas for it, and I don't think anyone's explored that because they don't want to be that guy yet.
I think the social application, everybody's talked about this already, and we're all savvy to this stuff, but what it's going to do to our social lives is really what's going to change in the most profound way in VR. We're all going to be interacting in a completely different way in 5 years. That's really where things are going to change.
So multiplayer, there's like no multiplayer games. There's not really that many.
Lunar Flight's a multiplayer game.
There will be.
Yeah, just a few. Yeah. Oh yeah. So as far as genres go, I'm just going to pull back on Proton just a bit. The reason I went with that game was because it was a love letter to the initial spark of VR in the early 1990s. There's Amiga references all over the place. There's chiptunes and stuff. And I just couldn't live with myself if I didn't say thanks to that era. So
I'd like to say thanks to Justin because his demo was one of the first demos I tried, and his interface was quite inspirational for the work that I did. Thank you, Justin.
Helped a lot of us get over the initial motion sickness issue as well.
I'd like to say the same thing to Sean. This cockpit was incredibly inspirational to the things I'm doing. And also the decision to make Rift Wars a cockpit-based simulation is very much practical, based upon the controllers that I have access to, the people have access to, the fact that people are going to be sitting in a chair. It just kind of makes the most sense. There's a lot of other cool things that can be done, but this seemed to be the first thing I wanted to attack just because it was the most obvious thing based upon the technology we have right now.
Excellent. Excellent. Before we get into questions, I want to ask this because this is kind of looking toward the future of what it means to be indie game dev. How are you managing relationships with some of the bigger players, getting published, being on Steam, approaching Oculus and their development arm? Sony, Project Morpheus, are you approaching them? Like, how are these managing these relationships and getting these things off the ground? You got some great ideas and trying to, make it the gig.
And a short answer, yes, on all of that. I mean, as an indie, well, I mean, I can't say I've been indie for very long, technically. But that being said, I am talking to anybody and everybody I can. There are so many different nuances between each device coming out, and a lot of possibilities, opportunities in each and every one. Communication, though, is a little difficult because while we're growing with this, they are too. And so their staff is changing, their business models are changing, their Oculus one day, now they're owned by Facebook another. And so in that, they have more growing that was unexpected on our part. And so Sony's an established group as well, and they have this whole new division for VR coming up. And so for an indie developer to go to them, they're still working on all of this stuff. We're early. From my perspective, it seems like we're very early, which I love being front line on this stuff, honestly. It's just when it comes to making a living on it before the hardware comes out, that's the real question from an indie perspective. So
the biggest risk, I think, for anyone who's throwing themselves into this right now, being an indie is not it's the hardest thing at the best of times, really, sometimes. And I'm lucky that I released Lunar Flight. I worked in the games industry for about 10 years before I created Lunar Flight. And it got published on Steam and a few other boards. So I've made enough money to survive off the income for that and stay focused on doing the things I'm doing now. Yeah, but if you're kind of hedging your bets that maybe next year the product will come out and then you'll have a market to make sales of, that's a big unknown, just exactly when that's going to happen. In terms of talking to the companies, it is possible they have developed relations and you can get in touch with those guys. They're often, like Justin said, very, very busy, and you might see days where you don't get a response, but they often do get back to you. So
that's the steepest learning curve, I think, is just building relationships with the companies. You have to be really accessible and understand that they're overwhelmed and busy. So I really think the best path to market, though, is through Steam, because Valve is taking a very serious look at VR, and they see it changing the entire industry within a very short time period. And their whole marketplace is changing right now, so it's a much more open market. And they're very approachable, great people to work with. So definitely head in that direction. Do your Kickstarter, approach Valve and Steam, and just reach out. I mean, you can reach out to them, and it's really not that big of a deal. And Sony, likewise, are being very approachable, and I think it's obviously because they want strong platform support when they release, and they're here right now, so go talk to them. And you just have to get over that whole thing. Well, it's Sony, I'm scared shitless to talk to Sony. Just go talk to them. Yeah.
Eric Valve is really, really interested. GDC, they flew me up to Seattle to come check out their prototype stuff. They're very keen to talk to VR developers because they're trying to get their Steam VR platform up and running.
And they really need indie developer help right now with their Steam VR overlay and that whole system. So absolutely, they're very interested in engaging.
Like Justin said, it's very early, so it's kind of hard right now. Like Oculus has a development kit, you can get it, you can get your game working on there. So make something good, you can talk to them. As far as Sony goes, I've spoken with them. They obviously don't have developer kits to hand out quite yet, right? So a year from now, it'll be a lot easier for you. And you'll have more choice. But right now, Steam is just dying for VR stuff. Because I got granted in 31 hours. So like the people on Steam are just itching for new VR stuff. So yeah, but everyone's very easily approached. Like the guys from Sony are just people. You can walk up to them and be like, hey, so what's the deal? When can I get my dev kit? It's the same with all the hardware companies here, right? Just talk to them. If they have something for you, great. If they don't, hit the card. When they do have something, we'll talk.
I think on that note, I mean, like just being really early, like if you're getting involved in the development now you'll have a great advantage, I think, in terms of experience and knowledge that There may not be a lot of money around right now from companies, but there'll be people looking to spend money here, and they'll be looking for people who have knowledge and experience in that area.
Yeah, so if any of you venture capitalists are out here with the fancy socks and such, just saying.
Yeah, another kind of weird thing to think about is, you see all these companies making like the Dive, which is an Android or iPhone-based deal. So it's strange to think about, but maybe we're making apps, or at least part of what we're doing is making apps. So Google Play, iOS, the App Store. I don't know, I kind of just had that realization, like, whoa.
Well, no one knows what Oculus is ultimately going to do with their rollout in marketplace. I have a feeling it'll be much like that.
Yeah, I absolutely think that they'll have their own storefront. On the nature of the apps, I think, and talk about the genres of games, I think there is a great opportunity right now to make a lot of games like the short play experiences you have on mobile phones, like an endless run. There's going to be a lot of them, and they're a simple interface, and they're easy to do, and quite addictive for people. So you can be that guy.
Candy Crush VR.
I've got it. That's on Candy Crush VR. I've got it.
Beach hut hammock simulator.
All right, we're gonna have people come up and start lining up for questions, but while folks are lining up, very quickly, what is the one thing on your wish list for your engine or an SDK, the tool that you would love to have for VR development?
So I think about audio a lot, and there's a couple of companies that are making binaural plugins that do spatial audio really accurately, but that is all still on the listener side. So like, your audio listener in Unity, nobody's really thinking about reflections. I think presence is going to take a huge jump once we start modeling reflections in sound. One of the reasons UE4 looks so delicious is because it does a really good job bouncing light around the scene. So you've got your global illumination using physically based shaders. I think these are kind of like techniques that we need to adopt in sound, right? So I can imagine a day, or at least I can lust after a day when you're building your shader in UE4, you're picking all the light reflective properties, but you also pick the sound reflective properties, right? So my dream feature is, physically based audio shaders, I guess, someday.
Funny enough, it's the same issue, really. Audio is the underdeveloped component of VR.
No respect.
And so Joel Green, our sound designer, is having the same exact discussions about.
Yeah, if anybody's done like the virtual haircut, and you know what I'm talking about, that thing is amazing. Like that's one of the best senses of presence I've ever got, and it's just an audio track.
Audio is
Stereo as well. Stereo track. Yeah, it's quite
Audio and real-time global illumination, really nice too.
Unity 5 is doing that.
Yeah. But I have to say post-process effects. So, there's a lot of established special effects that are screen-based and stuff, and most of them don't work in VR. So you'll get glow in one eye or right here, and all of it's a huge mess. So you're seeing this transition in the asset store at Unity where has Oculus support. And it doesn't say that, you'll see people asking, And whenever I'm looking for anything, it has to say that, or I'm not even going to bother hitting that button.
That's a huge issue with most assets on the Unity asset store with respect to VR, is they're just not compatible with the Oculus SDK.
And it's hard to ask for a refund of it,
So a lot of custom coding there.
One more thing I want the Unity asset store for Unreal Engine 4.
Yes. I think they're doing that, aren't they?
Yes, they have.
There's like 5 things that are right now.
So for me, if it's an engine feature for Unity, I think it really needs the ability to target a display. Identify a display and target a display, so we can get rid of this whole adapter one bullshit.
That one,
Oculus might do something like that too for their consumer version. They must have like a monitor switcher or something built in, because it's crazy having to dig behind my computer.
The killer app for Unity, I'm sorry, I'll just say this quickly, is being able to actually go into editor in VR with motion control and move stuff around. Change your scene lights, grab transforms, move stuff around physically in a VR space. Somebody make that, please. I've never seen my kids again though.
I was about VR and VR.
I was talking to the Prio guys about that actually, putting on the Prio suit and recording animations real time in your engine. Like I've got that
That would be
kung fu
awesome.
dummy, like right at the beginning of Technolust. I'd love to like do some kung fu on it, record that animation like in engine, just save it off. That would be amazing.
You all making me much too excited right now, so we're going to switch to questions. So yeah, let's get some questions for the panel.
Hi everyone. This on?
This is not on. I am going to come down and fix that.
You can hear me now. Awesome. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Dee from Everyday VR, and I've played all of your games on my channel. I think they're all one of the best titles on the Rift right now. They're very exciting. It's great to see you all in one place. I never thought I would see that. And I guess talking about the role of YouTube in publicity for indie games, like everyone knows kind of how instrumental YouTube Let's Plays were for Minecraft and becoming as successful as it is today. And I wonder, kind of, are there unique challenges for VR in terms of publicity on the web, and kind of what can you do to facilitate the level of extensibility and modding that you need to have kind of a whole channel built around a single game?
Well, I guess the obvious thing is how the video is output. So I think with the Morpheus, you can split the channel out to a normal display. So I guess maybe that's an engine feature we could request and it is actually something really cool. If you're going to make a trailer or something for your game, I had to hack up and put in a normal camera and try and capture footage. And I didn't even wear the Rift on my head. I kind of held it like this and tried to look at stuff and seeing and capture footage that looks more presentable than the twin barrel distortion view. So that'd be something I think we did.
Yeah, we had to build in a mono cam mode basically, and
or a network-based situation where you can have a client running the game and it's synced with a head view. It can be recorded from a normal camera perspective.
So one of the things I found difficult though is how do you convey your game, a VR title, in 2D? And so it's just, you don't get it till you try it. And it's not like I can shove a VR headset through the screen. But hopefully, with help of Oculus and Sony and stuff, this won't be a problem for long.
It also might become a user experience thing. Like over time, as more and more people try VR, they know what to expect, right? Once you've tried it, and even if you see something that would be crazy in VR, right? So maybe people who watch the channels and they're VR enthusiasts, so they kind of know what to expect.
I can see, like, Sony's really forward-thinking. I can see building some kind of application where you as a game reviewer could actually go through the experience and you could actually track, I could track as the viewer in VR, floating kind of to the side of you or just walking along with you. I think that stuff's going to happen eventually.
Like a spectator.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm a partner here from Google Maps. I'm just a VR enthusiast and I love your guys' work. But I'm curious, as developers of VR, developing in VR, I wonder if you guys have any thoughts on if you wore the headset all day long and you developed in VR, what would that environment look like? Would it be Emacs or VI or whatever editor you use on a huge screen? You can look around left and right, up, down, everywhere, or would it be virtual reality or manipulating code?
If I could sit somewhere, if I had it on all day developing code, I would be sitting on a rock in the rings of Saturn, doing my stuff. I mean, there is no reason to be based in reality because it's virtual, and that's, to me, kind of the point.
I think just a giant workstation that I can't afford would be amazing.
Like a crazy scientist, right?
One giant 70-inch monitor surrounded by a dome of monitors. Need some sort of haptic feedback or some way I can find my keyboard.
I love VR, but I don't want my headset on all day. I just don't. It's not what I want to do.
And why is that?
I still have a lot of respect for the two-dimensional display of information. A book is a good way to present text, and a screen is a good way to present code.
I don't think we book in your headset though.
I don't think we've gotten to that point. The comment made a comment recently about what resolution we need to be able to actually code in VR. So I guess that's one of the critical things. You need to use the keyboard extensively for when programming. That would probably be a real challenge, I think.
John Carmack said that he thought 4K would be good enough to code in VR.
Yeah, like all of us at the office would love to develop in VR, like just stay in VR, as long as the form factor of the headset was right. So we would get our radioactive rash around our face.
But I'm like James, I can't wear it all day long, and you know, I don't know if it's the nature of the DK one, but I notice after an extensive period, it's just something there in the back of your head that's knows you've been in there too long.
I'm not happy unless I have a head-mounted display on.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Will from Tactical Haptics. So around the time of GDC, Ubisoft declared that they wouldn't develop for VR until there was 1 million devices installed. Obviously, the indie developers have a little bit more latitude to make decisions to invest time in developing content. For you guys, what kind of barriers are there? What are you thinking about in terms of install base for even supporting things like motion controls? Because I'm even one step beyond that, where our haptic feedback kind of works best when it's built on top of a tracking solution that there's no install base for right now. So what kind of barriers are there first for you to think about in terms of developing for beyond the console controller to motion controls, and then the next step beyond that for the tech enhancements that we're thinking about?
Unity integration. How fast can I get it up and running? So, I mean, I've been given a few input devices to try out for various things, and I like to wrap the prototype. If I can't do that, if I have to spend a week or two just getting the thing up and running, it's going to be a problem. So, have it ready for us to put in a game, because we're not going to be experts with the hardware. That's whoever's developing its job. For us, we got to make that hardware. We make that transition from the thing in your hand to the interaction in the game.
I'm taking Unity and probably UDK integration as kind of just a given that we're going to do.
Right.
Yeah, I guess at least path of resistance that can get you into it and then start developing and actually creating, right, as opposed to learning how to use the system. You need a really good API with a really good interface to it.
So for AAA, it's about mitigating risk, and whereas for indies, we can take different unique risks. But I think everybody knows that motion control and haptics are the future of VR. Everybody here knows that. So it's, again, it's just an issue of accessibility and how easy you can slot it in and make it work with your indie project, because we don't have big teams, so we just need something simple and quick and accessible, right?
At least in the short term, I'm trying to focus on games just using a head-mounted display, because every time you add a hardware peripheral, you shrink your potential market. So yeah, at least in the short term, I'm trying to go, you know, just the headset.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same but I love those things and I really want to work with them. But I have to think, you know, I want to make sure I get as many people as possible, so I'm kind of avoiding doing that now.
And it remains to be seen what the mass market, like what level of peripheral, you know, how much stuff they want.
Yeah, and as an indie, you have to make sure you have strong gamepad support no matter what, if you're going to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's one of the things that Sony really has an advantage of. It's unified hardware. You're guaranteed that the player's going to have a dual shot for it at the very least. And so it's one of those things.
Not necessarily though. You know, I mean, like people who just want to buy a headset, like not gamers who are interested.
Oh, right. But on the Sony.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
Make this the last question.
Hi, my name is Ari. I'm just a student. I just want to learn all about this kind of stuff. But my main question is, comparing to, as we see with Sony, is going to have their own store for the Morpheus. And I don't know about the Oculus, but I would assume so they'd have their own store. And are you as developers and also for people in this community worried about how exclusivity will become a factor in for games, things like that? Because we see that in just the normal game environment with the PlayStation 4, for example, and the Xbox One, where exclusive titles are the driving force. So, how do you feel threatened?
Definitely. I haven't even accepted my Steam greenlight yet because I don't know. It's too early to know, right? If someone wants to make Technolust a launch title, let's do it. Like that's guaranteed sales, right?
As long as the money's in.
Yeah, as long as the money's there. Yeah, I like money. But yeah, it's tricky right now because nobody knows, right? Like it's the same with the hardware. You know, a new platform might come out, nobody cares. So you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into anything right away.
So yeah, things are just so raw and new. So Steam is obviously the best bet right now, but yeah, it's just such a wild frontier, and nobody's talking. There's so many secrets flying around, and It's very hard to position yourself as an indie right now, other than to just kind of stay in the middle and hope that they approach you with more interest.
Yeah, I guess with Oculus, I feel pretty confident that we should some form of store where they can distribute games, content. That will come with the package, so any consumer buys the product, it'll be front and center, so they can't not see it. So if they have a storefront that has featured content and you're in that featured content, you're going to be seen. But if you commit to that, and then Sony, you can't, if there's some sort of exclusivity, and then you can't be on Morpheus, and then Sony sells a million more units, and you're like, oh shit, I missed out on an opportunity there.
Thank you.
All right, absolutely. All of you for your input.
You were the very first person who reviewed my title. I saw you with these goggly-eyed things, and who is this guy? But
As excited as you about VR in general. So.
Oh, try not to cry on stage. All right, well, with that, we are going to have a couple of things happen. Like yesterday, there's lunch from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Again, it's in front of the expo hall. There's not enough room for everyone to sit down there. So because of that, we also have a workshop happening in this room featuring Denny from 6 Sense, talking about getting started with the 6 Sense SDK, which is also very, very exciting because the intention is for it to be motion controlled middleware. So it's not just for 6 Sense STEM, but also the intention is to any motion controller to be able to interface with this, and that's going to make it much easier for the gentlemen on the stage and developers in general. So, along with that, evidently there is another STEM giveaway. So if you're here at this workshop, they'll be giving away another STEM system as well, on a raffle style. So stay tuned for that. But thank you once again. We're going to transition, and we'll be starting the workshop here at 12 p.m. And once again, lunch is from 12 to 2. If you have any trash, cups, plates, whatever, please take those with you and dump them in the trash. Thank you so much.